Hello everyone, welcome back. It's Foot Forecast. In today's video, I'm going to be discussing how do Coventry stay up after their promotion to the Premier League. When you're watching this video, Coventry would have been promoted and it's a massive achievement for them. And they've clearly been the best side in the Championship this season. That's proven by the Coventry points total compared to the rest. They had one little period from sort of January to February where they struggled, but they showed a lot of fighting character to get through that period after that 3-1 win against Borough, and they fully deserve this. And it's been 25 years since they've been in the Premier League. So massive credit to Frank Lampard and of course the players for this success. So the first thing I'm going to be discussing in this video is would I keep Frank Lampard as manager, and I absolutely would. He deserves a go in the Premier League with this Coventry side after taking them up, and he's actually got a decent record in the Premier League, at least in his first season at clubs. With Chelsea in the embargo season, he got them into Champions League football. The next season he was sacked, but he still proved he could do it at Chelsea at least for 1 year, and then at Everton he managed to keep the side up, which is similar to what he'd be doing at Coventry. He was sacked the following year, and Everton did stay up under Sean Dyche. So there is proof that Lampard can do it, and at the end of the day, I think he deserves this chance. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go for a keep and sell for the players, and then I'm going to decide how would Coventry's starting lineup look like next season and what signings do they need to add. And I'm also going to take into account for this keep and sell segment Coventry's strategy. They've previously talked about trying to keep the squad sort of together, so I'm going to try to take this into account when I'm doing this. So let's start off with the keepers, and the first keeper I'm going to be discussing is Carl Rushworth. Rushworth is on loan from Brighton currently, but I think Coventry will go and buy him, and they should go and buy him. So I'm going to put Rushworth in the keepers, one of the keepers. Then we've got the next player, which is Doven. I'm going to also put Doven in keep. I think he's a good enough backup for Coventry. Maybe you could go and get a better backup for the Premier League, but I wouldn't be wasting too much money in this area. So that's why I'd also be keeping Ben Wilson as the third choice keeper. For me in the keep area, I think you're better off just sticking with what you've got and going up with it, and of course buying Rushworth, and that's it, because I think they need to spend in different areas. Then we're on to the next position, and it is the right back, and the first one I've got is Van Nieuwkerk. I would keep Van Nieuwkerk. I think he's proven this season at Coventry and in past seasons he could be good enough for the step up to the Premier League. Then we've got the other fullback, and it is Latibaudier. I would be selling him. I don't think he's good enough for the Premier League, and I wouldn't keep him as a potential backup. Then we've got the centre-half, starting off with Bobby Thomas. I would keep Thomas. I think he's good enough to potentially start in the Premier League for Coventry. Then we've got Liam Kitching. I'd keep Kitching, but most likely it is a fourth or maybe a third choice centre-half. I don't think he's good enough to start in the Premier League, but I think he could be useful depth. Then we're on to the next player, which is Wolfenden, and I would be looking to either sell or loan Wolfenden. I put him in sell, but you could potentially loan him in case you go down the following season, because I think he could do a job in the Championship, but I think you need better than him in the Premier League. And finally, I've got Bidwell, and I would be selling Bidwell. Then we're on to the left backs, and we're starting off with Miguel Brau. I would put him in the sell. He's another one you could potentially loan in case you go down, but I think you need better at left back for the Premier League. He's had some issues with injuries this season, but I think you need to improve on this position. Then I've got De Silva. I would keep De Silva. I think at worst he could be a useful squad option for Coventry. So then we're on to the midfield, starting off with Grimes, and I really like Grimes as a player. He's been excellent for Coventry in the Championship this year, and he would be in my team of the season, and he's been crucial for them. They're probably Coventry's most important player. They're a completely different side without Grimes, but will he be able to cut it in the Premier League? I'm not so sure as a starter, but I would still put him in keep. The reason why I say this is I'm a bit worried about the physicality for a player like Grimes. He's technically brilliant, but Coventry are unlikely to dominate the ball, so they may need a more physical midfield option to deal with the physicality levels of the Premier League. But he's definitely a very good player, is Grimes. Then we've got Onyeka. What a deal this was to bring him in on loan in January, and I would make this deal permanent. And I think there's actually an obligation to make the Onyeka deal permanent, so he's going to go straight and keep. He's definitely a midfielder that can play in the Premier League, in my opinion, and he's got the physicality to do it. He's been excellent for them. Then we've got Victor Torp. I think I would keep Torp again. I think he's a decent player, is Victor Torp. He was replaced by Onyeka in the starting 11, but he's still a good player, and he's got the physicality to do it in the Premier League, so I would put Torp in keep. Then we've got Jamie Allen. I would put him in sell. I don't think he's good enough to be in the Premier League with Coventry. Then we've got Jack Rodoni straight away. Jack Rodoni is in keep. He's Premier League quality in my opinion. I was amazed that no one picked him up in the summer. There was massive interest from Everton, but nothing happened with that. Then we've got Josh Eccles. I'm going to put Eccles in keep. Do I think he's Premier League quality? Probably not. In fact, I don't think he is at all. But I think he is the sort of player you would probably want to keep in your squad, sort of around the dressing room, and I think he'd be a decent option. If not, you could look to sell or loan Josh Eccles, because I don't think it's a must to keep him in the squad. Then we're on to the next options, and we're starting off with Esse. I would, in the loan for Esse, I wouldn't be looking to make that deal permanent. He hasn't been that great since coming in for Coventry. And Cov have got better winger options, like Sakamoto, who I do rate quite highly. I'm going to discuss later if I would start him, but he's definitely in the keep. And then I've got Mason Clark. I'm definitely keeping Mason Clark. He's a player I think that could adapt to the Premier League quite well, because he's got the physicality and he's a very good player, is Mason Clark. Then we're on to the next Coventry player, and that is Marcelo. I would put Marcelo in sell. I don't think it's necessary to keep him in the squad. And I would say the same for Kesler Hayden. They're going to need better in the Prem. Then we're on to the next player, which is Min Hyung Yang. I would put him in end loan. He's coming on loan for Coventry and hasn't got himself in the starting 11, so that's pretty simple. Then we've got Thomas Asante. I think some people may be tempted to keep Thomas Asante. I personally wouldn't keep him because I don't think he's good enough to make that step up. He was excellent for Coventry at the start of the season, but I don't think he's good enough to play in the Prem. You could maybe loan Thomas Asante in case you go down. He'd be a decent option, but I would sell him because you need to bring in as much funds as you can, and you probably get a decent fee for someone like him. And I would do the same with Ellis Sims. I would sell Ellis Sims. I don't think he's anywhere near good enough for the Premier League. Maybe he's the sort of player you bring on with sort of 10 minutes to go in a game, but I wouldn't do this with him because I think you're better off trying to get rid of the wages and trying to bring in some more funds. So then I'm on to the final player, Haji Wright, and straight away I've got him in keep. He's a player I want to see in the Premier League. I think he's got the pace and physicality for it, and he's proven he can be a very good championship striker with Coventry, so it'll be interesting to see if he can make that step up. I think my concern potentially around Haji Wright could be inconsistency. He's a player that sort of goes through sort of spells. When Haji Wright's at his best, he's a very difficult player to stop. For example, that game against Borough. But he does have the ability to sort of have 4 or 5 games where he struggles in a row. But I think he deserves that chance in the Premier League. Some people may say they would sell Haji Wright to raise some funds for someone better. But I think at least you should be keeping him in the squad. So now I've done the keep and sell. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some lineups and discuss potential players that could start for Cov. So this first lineup I'm displaying is the Coventry lineup that I'm expecting them to play, and it is the 4-2-3-1 of this season. And these 9 players, I think they could potentially start in the Premier League, and that is Rushworth, Van Uwijk, and Bobby Thomas as sort of the keeper and defence. I don't have Kitching and De Silva. I think that's an area that Coventry straight away need to improve. So I'm already saying they need a left back plus a centre half. Then I've got Grimes and Onyeka. And then I've got Mason Clark, Rodoni, Sakamoto and Haji Wright. Those are players I think could potentially start for Coventry in the Premier League. Then I've got the next lineup, and this lineup's more about players that I'm pretty certain can start. So straight away, I've got Rushworth and go again. Then I've got Van Uwijk and Bobby Thomas. I mean, those 3 players can start. And then obviously, I don't have Kitching and De Silva. Then into the midfield, I have Onyeka and Rodoni, and that's it. My concerns around Grimes is that physicality is technically brilliant, but I don't know if Coventry need that sort of player. I think Coventry needs sort of a João Gomez type player player, someone that offers it on the ball and off the ball. And I'm not sure if Grimes offers you enough off the ball. I don't think João Gomes is realistic, despite him going down with Wolves, but that sort of player would be good for Coventry. Then I have removed the front three. I'm not fully convinced that Sakamoto, Mason Clark, and Haji Wright can do it in the Prem, but I think they're three players that are worth trying to start in the Prem at some point. Especially Mason Clark, I really rate him. And look, if Haji Wright gets into some good form, he'd be worth playing up front. And I would like to see Sakamoto in the Prem. Potentially with VAR, Sakamoto actually could be more effective because he's probably less likely to be kicked at as he is in the Championship. So that means for Coventry, I'm saying that a centre-half, a left centre-half, then a midfielder, a Grimes type, but someone that's more physical. Then I'm saying two wingers and a striker. So those are the 6 signings, plus Rushworth and Onyeka that I'm saying I think Cov definitely need to make. And look, there's a chance that some of those players that put in the potential can start, but you at least need very good cover in those positions in case they're not up to Premier League level, because it's such a massive step up to make. And it's an even bigger step up now than it was before, because the gap between the Championship and the Premier League continues to increase, and this is a real problem. So then this is the final lineup I'm going to display, and this is basically the backup lineup. So I've got Doven in goal. You could improve in this area, but I'm not going to include that as one of the areas I would improve. Then I don't have a backup right back, so that is somewhere where Coventry need to sign a player, as well as another centre-half. For me, that centre-half has to be a centre-half that can compete with Bobby Thomas and the other one you sign in case one of them's not up to it. And I would also say that the backup right back should be ready to start easily in the Premier League in case Van Nieuwkerk can't make the step up. Then I've got Kitching, De Silva, Torp, Grimes, Eccles further forward in the 10, Mason Clark on the left, Sakamoto off the right, and Haji Wright up front. If that's your depth, then Coventry are in a good place. As I've already said, Mason Clark, Haji Wright, and Sakamoto plus Grimes could potentially start for Cov, but I'm not fully convinced. In total, I'm saying I think Cov need to make 10 signings, which sounds like a lot, but it's not going to be that much compared to some of the other sides that are potentially coming up, and also what's happened previously. And I still feel like I've kept most of the squad together. There's actually not a lot of players I ended up selling for Coventry. And to round up basically the signings I said, I think they need a right back that can definitely compete with Van Nieuwkerk. I think they need 2 centre-halves that could potentially start. I think they need a left back, another midfielder, a João Gomes type. Then I think they need 2 wingers and a striker as well. So that's what I think Cov needs. On top of that, I'd also look at some additional signings, potentially a backup keeper if you've got funds available, if there's someone that you think that could improve the squad that can maybe compete with Rushworth, because it's still a big step up for Rushworth to make, despite me thinking he's Premier League quality. And I'd actually also say, if you want to potentially sell Eccles in the 10, you could get a better backup for Rodoni in case he goes down, because Rodoni is going to be crucial for Coventry in the Prem. His box crashing is going to be so important for them. So overall, I think if Cov make the correct signings, they can stay up, because I think they've got a very good base of a squad. I think there's a lot of players that can potentially make that step up. If you look at a side like Sunderland, for example, if you make those right signings, you can definitely stay in this division. Is the gap too big? Yes, but it is still possible, as we saw with Sunderland. And similar with Leeds. Leeds made some crucial signings like Calvert-Lewin, like Stack, like Goodmanson, which has taken them to the next level. That's exactly what Coventry are going to need to do. And I want to see Cov stay up, as do I want to see all the promoted sides stay up, because I think it's good for the division. And I do like a healthy league where there is relegation battles, which I do expect Cov to be in, but I do think they can get out of it. Let me know your thoughts on it. Where do you disagree in terms of the keep and sell? What changes would have you made? And what sort of signings do you think Cov need? Do you agree with the positions I said? And who do you see making a Premier League step up? If you enjoyed this video, it would be great if you could subscribe to the YouTube channel as well as liking the video.